composts. Today's topics, we're going to look at how to make compost but faster than normal, and then the second half we'll look at how to grow fantastic asparagus. So if you've never grown your own or tasted homegrown asparagus, you're in for a treat. Okay, let's start with compost making. Now, you know that if you already make compost, I hope you do, you're probably following a technique which is called cold composting, where you just add gradually to a compost bin. You might be adding things like your kitchen scraps, maybe some garden clippings, lawn clippings, for example. Hopefully you're adding some brown matter or carbon-based stuff, which is such as autumn leaves or egg cartons, newspaper, lots of different things you can be adding, and then turning it weekly. And now if you do that, you'll find your bin never really fills because it's such a gradual process, stuff breaks down. But you know, after about 6 months or so, this is what you're going to end up with. You know, compost that's certainly usable, but it takes a long time to get there. If you want to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to show you how today. And now is a fantastic time of year to be doing it. And I call it hot composting. So you'll find that the temperatures inside your compost bin really start to fire up, and because of bacteria starting to break things down and really working overtime. So how's it done? The difference with hot and cold composting is that you have to fill the bin all in one hit. Now that's a lot of stuff. So they could be, again, your kitchen scraps, but you're more likely to have things like this time of the year where it's a fantastic time of the year to be raking up autumn leaves and keeping them for your compost bin. They could be, for example, bags of coffee grounds. If you're a regular at a cafe, they're always happy to get rid of things like that. You might have some straw, some pine bark, old mulch lying around. You might use this time of the year, and it's a great time to do some hedge clipping and a little bit of turning. And the difference here, you'll get this compost not after 6 months, but say 6 to 8 weeks time. So hopefully I've convinced you. Now I'm going to show you how it's actually done. So I've got a little infographic here. We want to make your compost heap all at once. So I am presuming you're starting with a compost bin that sits directly on the soil. And it's got to be well-drained soil, because this is going to create a lot of liquid, and we don't want that liquid staying in the bin, because otherwise your compost gets really wet and smelly. So sit your compost bin on well-drained soil. I always start with some twiggy materials, just a layer of them. So I might go around and prune some stuff in the garden, twiggy stuff. That just helps with the drainage, and this is the only layer you'll be adding that on. And then I might add some green prunings. Then I might add some, I've got chooks, for example, so I've got wood shavings in there laced with the chicken manure, a bag of coffee grounds, balls of newspaper, kitchen scraps might go in there, autumn leaves, layers of things. You see what I'm doing? Just layering different layers of different stuff. Now, you might not have these sorts of things, but we're going to talk about the difference, and you notice they're coloured either green or brown. You could put some old tan bark or mulch chips in there too. If you're growing any leafy green things such as comfrey, fantastic to put into your compost. Borage is another herb that you could be putting leaves of in there. Old straw from your vegetable beds. A layer of blood and bone or some other sort of organic manure. Whatever you want at the top. So look at the green and the brown there. So on the left-hand side, all those sorts of things would represent carbon-based materials. Really important to have those sorts of things. And there's a multitude of different things which would be carbon-based. Think of things that come from trees, for example. So besides the autumn leaves, very fine twigs, paper, balled up paper, newspaper could be in there. And on the right-hand side are things that are high in nitrogen. Kitchen scraps is what people generally put in, or you might think of lawn clippings, but there's lots of other things as well. So we're looking at a balance, trying to layer them all up so that we've got the green that's going to be intermingling with the brown stuff, or the carbon with the nitrogen. Making sure, though, that in between each layer that we are watering it down. And then put the lid on it and wait for a couple of weeks. Now I'm going to show you a little video of doing this, and this is available on YouTube or on my website, but let's see how it goes. Let's see if it works for me now. Yes, it's going to work. So making hot compost or fast compost. So gather as much before you start making your bin. So here I've gone around, done some pruning around the place, and I've got my bin. Now these are my preferred bins that sit directly onto the ground, but this can be done in other styles of bins as well. Start with my layer of twiggy stuff and then perhaps a layer of carbon. Every time you add that dry stuff, you do need to be watering it. Some autumn leaves. And there's a bag of coffee grounds. A local cafe will always give me that sort of stuff, if you, especially if you're a regular there. And coffee grounds are nitrogen based, so now I'm going to add in some newspaper. And after the newspaper, always a bit of water. Now these are green garden prunings. And then some, looks like dried autumn leaves in there as well. So perhaps the layers might be of the green stuff or the nitrogen-based stuff might only be, 3 or 4 centimetres. The bulky stuff, which is carbon-based stuff, might be 10 centimetre layer because it's just more bulky. If you've got green garden prunings, try and chop them down as finely as possible. They will break down a lot more quickly that way. Here I'm searching for different things. I've got some old compost in there. I'll just put that in there too. Not really necessary, just helps to add that bacteria, but that bacteria will be coming from the soil anyway. And nice and fast. Now, if you're to watch this on YouTube, you're going to have a musical backdrop, which I've dropped for today. It's those of us old enough to remember, it's the tune to Benny Hill. So nice and fast. And of course, this is sped up. I wish I could do it that fast. So looking around for what I can put in. The chooks have been not to come too close. They would be classified. Actually, their feathers could go in, but I'll leave them alone. And here I am just trying to fill up as much as possible. Do you notice there's only one little bit of kitchen scraps in there? The rest really is just garden materials. And so you put the lid on, and then after a couple of weeks, go and start turning it over quite regularly. That's just the same infographic all over again. So it's not that hard. The hardest bit about it is getting together as much of that compostable material as possible so that you can build the heap all at once. But you do need to go back and regularly turn it over. And then, yes, within 6 to 8 weeks, your compost should be ready to start to use. Just a point, I made one of these up on Mother's Day. The family gave me the morning off and I said, I'm going to go make a compost pile, as you do. But anyway, just checking it over a few days later, I started to turn it. I did notice there were some dry patches. So it's a good idea to get in there early just to make sure that it is thoroughly wet, because the things that break down your compost are soil microbes, and they are living organisms. They need water in order to reproduce. So if you find that nothing's happening, it could be the fact that it's too dry. So make sure it's nice and wetted through so that things can start to happen. And you'll find that when you start to turn it, you'll see steam coming up, and it's a fantastic thing to see.